Hi, my name is Deborah Sprang. I have been a tax return preparer for over 20 years. I passed the CPA exam but did not work under a CPA and went out on my own instead. I have earned the Enrolled Agent designation, an IRS approved credential, which requires me to take continuing education classes yearly to maintain my license. I'm going to talk about the 1040 in general, filing statuses, and dependents that appear on the Form 1040 and 1040 SR individual tax returns today, and finish up with some administrative details for dealing with the IRS. The 1040 SR has the same line items as the 1040, except it's in larger print and easier for seniors to read. Basically, on a 1040 return, what happens is that you add up your sources of income to determine your total income, and then you subtract either the standard deduction or the figure for itemized deductions to get your adjusted gross income. And then you subtract the taxes withheld, estimated taxes paid, and credits to determine your tax liability or tax refund. It's an addition and subtraction process, and it wouldn't be so difficult if it weren't for the buts, ifs, and ands. The filing statuses, which I'm about to talk to, are located at the top of the Form 1040, and the dependent section, which I'm also going to talk about, is about halfway down the form. See the Form 1040 that I briefly show you to spot these locations. First, filing statuses. There are 5: single, married filing joint, married filing separate, head of household, and qualifying surviving spouse. Single is for individuals who are unmarried or who legally divorced in 2022. Married filing joint is for married taxpayers, even if one spouse does not work. The married filing separate status is available for married taxpayers who want to keep their income separate from their spouse or who are separated but still married. The married filing separate status is not as favorable as the married filing joint. For example, there are some credits that are not allowed on the married filing separate return but are on the joint return. The head of household filing status is for taxpayers who, although married, are considered unmarried for tax purposes if the taxpayer, 1, lived apart from their spouse for the last 6 months of the tax year, and 2, filed a separate return from their spouse, and 3, paid over half the cost of keeping a home, and 4, provided a home for his or her child, adopted or foster child, for over half the year. And 4, the child can or could be claimed as a dependent if the other parent didn't have custody of the child. You can be single and never married and still qualify for the head of household status. Also, a parent can be claimed as a dependent using the head of household status even if the parent did not live with you. The qualifying surviving spouse status is for taxpayers who were widowed in 2022 and have not remarried, who provide over half the upkeep of a home for the year for a child as a dependent, or could claim the child except that it has income over $4,400, it filed a joint return, or it could have been claimed as a dependent on someone else's return. Now, a little bit about dependents. Dependents are still listed on the return even though the personal exemptions deduction is no longer used. We're talking about qualifying child and qualifying relative in this section. A dependent must be a qualifying child. A qualifying child is one who is your child, stepchild, foster child, your sibling, stepsister or stepbrother, half-brother, half-sister, or any descendant of these, such as your grandchildren and nieces and nephews. A dependent must be under 19 at the end of 2022 and younger than you or your spouse, or under the age of 24 and a student going to school and younger than you or your spouse, or any age, and be permanently and totally disabled. Also, a qualifying child dependent didn't provide for more than half of their support in 2022, and they are not filing a joint return in 2022 except to claim a refund of withheld income or estimated tax paid, and who lived with you more than half of 2022. So we talked about a dependent being your qualifying child. You can also have a dependent who fits the definition of a qualifying relative. A qualifying relative is a person who is your child, stepchild, foster child, or a descendant of any of them, or your brother, sister, half-brother, half-sister, or descendant of any of them, or your mother, father, or ancestor or sibling of any of them, or your stepbrother, stepsister, stepfather, stepmother, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, father-in-law, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, or any other person other than your spouse who lived with you all of 2022 as a member of your household and wasn't a qualifying child of the taxpayer or any taxpayer, and who had gross income of less than $4,400 in 2022, and for whom you provided over half of the person's support in 2022. On the 1040, you will fill in your dependents' names, social security number, relationship to you, and whether the child qualifies for the child tax credit and or the credit for other dependents. Just a brief word on the child tax credit and the credit for other dependents. There's a checkbox in the space you list your dependents, a checkbox for the child tax credit and a checkbox for the other dependents credit. If your dependent is under the age of 17 at the end of 2022, you may check the box to claim the child tax credit, and you would not be eligible to take the other dependents credit. The child tax credit reverts to $2,000 per qualifying child in 2022. If the dependent is older than 17, the other dependents credit is available if, number one, they have an individual taxpayer identification number or ITIN, two, if they are dependent parents or other qualifying relatives supported by the taxpayer, and three, if they are dependents living with a taxpayer who aren't related to the taxpayer, and four, if they are either a U.S. citizen, national, or resident alien. The maximum credit is $500 and is phased out for adjusted gross income over $200,000 for single and over $400,000 for married filing joint. These definitions of filing statuses and dependents are available in the 1040 instructions on irs.gov for you to read if you wish, or you can send me an email at deborahsprang@gmail.com and I'll try to help you out with any questions you might have. Now for administrative topics. For today, I wanted to finish up with creating an IRS online account. Only individual taxpayers, not businesses, can create their own online account to order transcripts, view, download, or print all transcript types, view information about economic impact payments and advanced child tax credit payments, and view digital copies of certain notices from the IRS. It also gives you key data from the most recently filed tax return. This online account also details any federal tax liability associated with your account. For reference, go to irs.gov and look at publication 5507. You can create an online account using ID.me, which requires photo identification. ID.me is a third-party service that uses facial recognition to authenticate identity. Alternatively, you can set up an online account during a live virtual interview with an IRS agent. The IRS is working to transition away from ID.me with the goal of introducing a better option after the 2022 filing season. A little bit about the IRS Tax Withholding Estimator. This tool, available on the irs.gov website, helps taxpayers calculate the correct amount of income tax withholding from their wages, pensions, and IRA distributions. The tool asks about various sources of income, provides tips on tax credits and deductions, and estimates how much withholding to request. Employees, self-employed taxpayers, and retirees can benefit from this tool. If you need to change your withholding with your employer for federal and state withholding, go to your employer and fill out a new W-4 for the federal and whatever form your employer would use for your state withholding. If you need assistance with filling out the W-4 to determine your correct withholding, you can email me at deborahsprang@gmail.com, and you'll need to give me your total income from all sources you expect for the year. This will be for 2023, and you must and how much you currently have withheld or federal and state from any other income sources, your household income, number of dependents, and any extra withholding you want taken out. And then one final note, if you ever have to change your address, you need to file Form 8822. You cannot change your address on an IRS online account. Has to be done through filing a paper return. So that concludes my talk for today. My contact details are on the next screen. My fees of $175 for personal returns and $250 for business returns are below the average return fees for this industry. Ask me questions for free. Thanks for watching.